Too loud?
Yeah, it's better.
Oh my god. I've turned everything down. Let's see. How
Is it the
about that?
right thing you're turning down? Because I hear no change. I hear no difference in the volume.
Oh, yeah, well, I've gone into the Banter settings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the microphone setting in Banter?
Yeah.
And I've got my mic boost. Mic boost is absolutely down to 0.
Right. So can you go? Are you?
Hang on.
Are you tethered or are you just?
Is that any better? How's that?
No.
Still the same.
Oh god. Mute myself. I'll not be speaking.
Well, you can just
You
turn your
can speak
microphone
when you
down
have
on
a
your
question,
PC.
of course.
Yes.
Well, that's odd. I can see.
Yeah,
I got kicked and I've come back and I can see myself over there.
Taskbar, you
Yeah,
have the settings.
Because that one's megaphoned.
Oh yeah.
Ah.
Whenever your
I'm just
microphone's kicked, you always stay here.
Okay. I tell
Just
you what,
looking
then.
in there
I'll
now.
That's
unmegaphone
you
myself. I
from
know.
another dimension.
It's strange.
Yesterday when I was
Right, okay.
testing out, Ashiga, are you back?
He's back.
Yeah, I still see myself over there, but never mind. You just have
Just
to
click on yourself. Click on the cog and unmegaphone it. You're a mod.
Ah.
Okay.
Okay, there we
Iron
go.
Wolf, can you
That's
hear
how
me
I do
now?
it. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Now
Thank
you
you.
sound really good.
That's
A
how
little
you
bit
get better
lower.
I
voice.
learned that for
A
experience.
bit lower.
Yeah.
Can
Okay.
you
No,
hear me?
you are now a little bit too low almost.
Hello.
Okay, so
right,
yesterday
how
I
about now?
tried to import a world, and when I came in, everything was pink.
Yeah, that's to do with the materials. There's a good chance that the world that you downloaded was built for a different render pipeline, and it may have had
But
incompatible.
I built it in
What would you
Blender,
say
and
now, Iron Wolf?
the
Are we
transfer
good, or?
process to Unity.
Yeah,
That's
you're
all
perfect.
I did.
Ah, magic.
Right.
Thanks
So
for that. Thank
you also transfer? Did you create materials for everything?
Yes, I had the materials and the textures. It
Yeah.
was all in the folder in Unity.
Yeah. So you have to actually create materials using the textures that you've used in Blender, and you have to apply them to all the models that you've created in Blender. It's not just a case of bringing the world in and having it work. You have to actually create materials, choose the correct shaders, choose the correct textures, and then apply them to the models.
Yeah.
We
looks like
won't
we're
be
not gonna have.
covering that
I'm gonna watch
today.
this.
We won't be covering it. That's a bit too advanced for today at the moment, because this is the very first session, and I have specifically done this for people who really don't have any experience and need to get off the ground to start with. I'm literally starting from the very beginning, as if assuming that people know nothing. If you do know stuff and I'm covering stuff that you already know, please do let me know. Don't just let me ramble on if you're not learning anything, and I'll jump ahead. But yeah, I think the first thing I need to do is get the
I think
stream
it's better
going.
we start from the beginning, because when you're recording it, the newbies will want to definitely watch it from the beginning. So
Yeah,
don't skip ahead on our behalf.
yeah.
Lisa, are you going to show how to configure Unity so it works with Banter as well?
Yes, there's nothing really to configure, to be honest. The only thing is when you're ready to upload your world, you need to know how to build it for Banter. But other than that, there's not really anything to do, to be truthful. Hopefully, you know, I'm not used to this screencast thing. Have I done it right? Yes, I have. So, I'm going to attempt to reload a frame for everybody. And you'll probably see yourselves all on the screen if I've done it right eventually.
Get me out of here. No, I'm a good
Like,
You see nothing?
You have a young one here, Lisa.
Whoa.
I keep having this
not a kid.
issue where I can never see the screen. When somebody's
Want to see a
screen
magic
capture.
trick? Watch this.
If you don't see the screen, it might be a good idea to try, if you open up your Banter menu and reload A-frame doesn't work, try clear cache and rejoin, and if that doesn't work, close Banter and restart it
Magic
and
trick
come
time.
back in.
My magic
Okay.
trick.
You have a young one here, Lisa.
Yeah.
Lisa, could you make me
No.
a mod so I can pick that person? Everyone is just being annoying.
Yeah.
Kick.
To come back and I'm gonna restart at Banter.
Let's have a
Come
look.
back in.
Just to
People
add
here.
more complexity to it. This is the first time I've actually been in 2D in here, so I can hardly find my way around. Just even navigating is difficult.
Rackalawi wows. Yeah.
Hopefully that sticks.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
With the
so
band.
Okay.
my first question, can people see the screen? That's the main thing.
Yes.
Yes, excellent.
Yes.
Right. Okie doke. So, what are we going to cover
restart it
first?
better.
I've got Blender open. I've got the Unity Hub open. Does everybody know, have they got Blender and Unity Hub, or at least Unity installed? Do they need help getting
Yeah.
started with that, basically?
No. we're good.
Okay, right.
Good, good.
Okie doke. Well, in that case, I'm going to start with Unity. We'll just start with a new project. And it's got to be in 2021 3.8. Always make sure if you've got more than one version installed, as I have, make sure that you're starting with the correct one for Banter. And what shall we call it? We'll call it
Lisa's workshop.
Lisa's workshop. Okie dokie.
Everyone grab a cup of tea.
Yep, while we all wait for it to start.
Am I in the way?
No.
Looking here.
Nope.
Yes, everybody keep hydrated.
Here it comes.
The only thing I do like to check when I start a new project, to make sure that your lighting all looks right in Banter, is to check under Edit, Project Settings, click on Player, and come on, Resolve and Packages. Let's just let it do its thing. I'm way ahead of myself.
In the manual for using Unity with Banter, you have the XR plug-in management and Oculus. Is that needed?
You can add it afterwards. I can show you how to set it up to build for Banter.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. But the first thing I do is check under File, Edit, Project Settings, click on Player, and down here where it says Colour Space under Rendering, make sure that is set to Linear. If it's set to Gamma, your lighting will be all off. Everything will look way too bright, bleached out, and the colours won't be right. So just change it. Some people, for some reason, it's already set to Linear. For me, it's always Gamma. I don't know why. So it's the first thing I do.
Reset it? Can you reset it retrospectively?
You can, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's many times I've uploaded a world and everything's been wrong, and I've realised that's all I needed to do. I changed it over, rebuilt, re-uploaded, and it was fine.
Okay, the easy fix. Good.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
which setting was that?
under Edit,
Splash screen.
yeah,
Yes.
Edit, Project Settings, and under Player. And then it's this section here, Other Settings, Rendering, Colour Space.
Gamma, and it would be linear, okay.
Yes, yeah. So from gamma to linear, always linear.
And what's the difference? Do you know? Or is it just something we should do?
Yeah, just something you should do. I honestly can't go into detail because I don't fully understand it myself. I just know it's somehow
that's
it's
fine.
the way the colours are calculated, colours and lightness calculated, and that's it.
But you did this only for PC now, and for Android. Is there a setting for that, or is it not?
No,
exist?
it's standard across the board. Always set it to linear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So whatever you're doing here, the only thing you need to do when you come to build for both PC and Android really is your optimization settings, and 9 times out of 10 that's just to do with the textures. We'll come to that later on. You can use higher resolution textures for PC, but you need to really reduce them for Android. And it's easy enough to do. We'll come to that. But the main thing that I want to cover today is more about navigation. I'll show you how to set it up to build in Banter as well. So you would go up to Window and your Package Manager. Make sure you, in this drop down thing, you're choosing Unity Registry. So it's basically the built-in packages. And the first thing I do is just type in XR, search for XR, and these are the two you want, XR Plugin Management and Oculus XR Plugin. So I usually start with the bottom, simply because when I install Oculus XR Plugin, it then asks me to update the XR Plugin one, so I just start with that and get the latest one anyway. Then I do the Oculus XR Plugin.
I'm gonna have to. I don't know what else to do. Like I just restarted my headset. I still can't see your screen, so I don't know.
That's weird.
That is.
I can think
Yeah,
I
have you
restarted
completely?
my headset. I restarted the app and everything.
Clear cache
I
and
don't-
rejoin.
Yeah.
Yes, I cleared that. I did that. A-frame, everything. Restarted everything. So
Only other thing I could
Try to
suggest
jump
is
to-
maybe ask a question. Yeah, you could try jumping to another world or to the lobby and come back. But otherwise, I would suggest going to Discord and popping in there the problem that you're having in support. I don't know whether it would be an ISP thing, if it's blocking the A-frame or the stream. I don't know.
okay.
But yeah, if you pop a question in the support channel in Discord, somebody will probably answer you pretty quickly.
You
Okay,
can always
thank
try
you.
to turn it off and on again.
Yeah, and this is coming from an IT guy, yeah. So the next thing I would install after the XR stuff is Cine Machine. So we'll install that.
Yeah, I followed Faye's video on this, and I guess this has brought us up to a similar kind of point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except we created something called template, whereas we're doing Lisa's classroom or
workshop.
Absolutely. Hang on, I
Workshop,
just
yeah,
want to
that's
open another window here. There we go. And we'll just go down to D. Come on, Banter projects, and then down here somewhere we've got Banter SDK. I'll just drag the latest one in. So you can just...
This is 0.4.
Is it? Oh, well, I'm still on 2. I didn't realise there was a 4. But that's fine,
Yeah,
I'll
it's
download
definitely
the
a
4.
4.
It's still the same
Yeah,
then, regardless. I've been using 2 and
you-
it's working fine.
4's got a lot more options.
Right, okay. Shall I have a look for it while you...
And now you have to find it on Discord, and it's like a pain.
Okay,
Just
let's
search
have a
for
look.
004. Control F004.
Yeah.
0.0.4.
Oh. There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
14th of January. Really? See, I didn't think that had officially been released yet. That's why I wasn't... Oh. That's why I wasn't using it. We're going to cover these as well in a bit when we get to Blender. That's why I've got them open. But yeah, let's just drag that one in. Okay, I'm curious. If we open that, oh, look at that. Yeah, that's totally different.
It's nice.
You're all excited there.
Wow.
New toy.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. Right, let's close that for now. So, as you're probably aware, you can bring in primitives into Unity, which is great if you just want to play in a few boxes, or you want to build stuff just with primitive shapes, which is perfectly doable. But you are very limited. You can't do any UV unwrapping. Everything is UV unwrapped anyway. All the Unity primitives are automatically UV unwrapped. They've already automatically got a light map UV as well, because everything needs to have two channels, two UV channels, one for textures and one for light maps. And all the primitives automatically have those in Unity. They also automatically have colliders, I believe. You can turn them off and on. But yeah, there are limits to what you can do. But you would basically either click on the plus button, or you can right click, and you choose what you want to bring in. So for instance, I want to bring in a cube. We've got a cube. Now, a quick way of zooming in on the object that you've got selected, you can either double click in the hierarchy, or you can press F, and that'll do the same. F on your keyboard. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have screencast keys on here. We do in Blender. I've got my screencast keys on, but I don't think there's anything like it for Unity, so I'm just going to try and remember to tell you what I'm doing. You can use the right mouse button to kind of pan around your view. The middle mouse button will, rather say right mouse button, it's as if your camera's staying in the same place but rotating. Middle mouse button, you're panning the camera. That's right, that's the pan. And your left mouse button is for box selection or selecting objects.
We'll ask you, Simon.
Oh God.
What?
I'm gonna have to. I don't even know how to get out of here.
What's the matter?
He's stuck behind the screen.
Oh, goodness gracious. Can you?
I think I'll have to re-enter.
Oh,
Yeah,
just respawn. Yeah, just respawn. It'll take you back to the door.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bail out, come back again.
Okay. So, as you can see from the box here, we have 3 arrows. And if you have a look up here, you can see what these are. We'll just try and get that so it's next to the greyish part of the sky box here. So the green is Y, that Y is always up, but in Blender, Z is always up. So you have to make sure you export your models correctly so it adjusts the axes. But you don't need to worry about that just yet. X, I usually class X as like left and right, and Z as forwards and backwards. And the point, the center point of all these arrows is the origin point of your object. And this will become more clear when we start looking at stuff in Blender. You can see here there's a tiny little yellow dot in the center of this box. And the box is centered on the axes in Blender. The origin point is really important. It probably won't seem important yet, but you will be using this a lot for aligning stuff. If I was to edit this in vertex mode and move the origin point to that vertex, you can see the little dots there. If I then centered it, the corner of the box is centered. So the origin point is really, really important. It's worth trying to remember where that is, and because, as I say, when you come to snap things, when you come to rotate things and everything else, it's Yeah. Anyway, up the top here, you've got a few buttons. And at this second one where we've got the world, the globe, this is where you've got both global and local origin point. Now that's not going to make much sense, but if, for instance, I had this, let's just do it. We'll just rotate the box a bit. And you'll see that the axes still pointing the same way because it's using the world axes. If you change it to local, it's using the axes of the box. So that's another thing that you will need to keep in mind as well when you come to line up objects. We can move this box along its own axis, or we can move it along the world axis and it keeps its rotation.
Ah, okay, now I get
You've also got these little boxes here, which are very handy. This one means you want to move it along the Y plane, so you can move it anywhere on the X and Z. This one you can move it anywhere on the Y and X. Or Y and Z rather, and this one on the Y and X. So they are very handy if, for instance, you can click on any of these little handles here, and if you click on the box, it'll change from perspective view to orthographic view. So you get none of the perspective, it's just as if it was a drawing on a piece of paper, and you can then drag it around and place things. I do this a lot when I'm placing stuff in rooms, for instance. I'll go into orthographic view from the top and move things. You can rotate it exactly the same.
Yeah.
And then obviously everything looks wonky when you come out of top view, so just click on the box again and you go back into perspective and it looks right. Another handy thing you can do is when we bring in a cube, up here it tells you where it's spawned it in. It just spawns it wherever you were looking, basically, but you can reset it to the center by hitting the three little dots and hit reset, or right click on the bar and hit reset. Press F and it'll zoom in and you'll see it's dead in the center of the world. If you wanted, you could resize this. So you could, this is the resize button, and you can just drag a handle out. You can do that for any of the axes, or what you might decide to do is build something with blocks. So you could duplicate this cube, and because the cubes, I believe in Unity, are 1 meter across, 1 meter dimensions, you could move it along by a meter and it's exactly lined up. Another thing you can do is you can hold down the V key, V for victory, and you'll get a little box down wherever, one of the corners, and you can drag it and snap it to vertices. So that's a basic thing of navigating around Unity. It's not difficult. You will find that this rotation and panning just becomes second nature after a while. But the real power is when we start getting into Blender. So with Blender, it's much the same kind of thing. You've got the middle. In Unity, you use the middle mouse button to pan and the right mouse button to rotate. In Blender, you use the middle mouse button to rotate and is it shift? Shift and middle mouse button to pan.
Okay, yeah. Just to make it nice and easy.
Yeah. I know. It's not the same in both packages,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit of getting used to, but you soon find out what you've done wrong.
Yeah.
Like me,
Yeah.
I hit
Yeah.
Alt and middle mouse button, and all it did was change me to an orthographic view.
But Lisa, you can just adjust all the buttons though. You can adjust the keys, so you basically could work in the same way if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You could do.
In Blender.
You could do, but obviously I'm working with the standard default settings rather than any confusion. We can always go into that later on. We can go into customizing Blender to suit your workflow better.
Yep.
The main thing I want to go through with Blender though is just explaining what meshes are to start with, because a lot of people don't really understand what we're talking about with edges and vertices and faces and things. If that is all, you're perfectly comfortable with that, I'll skip over it. But the main thing, I'm just going to go into edit mode to start with. In fact, yeah, we'll do it the proper way. Up here, you've got edit mode and object mode. Sculpt mode, we're not going to go into yet. Sculpting is brilliant if you want to do especially organic shapes. You want to sculpt a character, you want to make a face or whatever, that's brilliant. Vertex paint we probably won't even cover, but I will if you're interested in. Vertex paint is really, really useful for things like what's really good about Vertex paint is that Shape Lab, which is a VR sculpting tool, you can actually sculpt as if you're sculpting clay in VR, and when you paint your object and export it, it exports it with vertex colours rather than material colours, rather than materials. And vertex colours is information that's stored along with the mesh data. It's not the same as a material colour where you will create a material, apply a shader, choose a colour, apply it to your object. That's a different thing entirely. So yeah, Vertex paint has its uses, but I think they're quite limited. Weight painting is more to do with avatars than anything, or anything you want to apply a rig to and animate it. So we'll probably not be covering that. Texture paint we will at some point. Texture paint's great because you can paint directly on your objects. And it creates a texture file for you, which you can apply to a material in Unity, stick it on your object, and it just works. But we're going to go into object mode now, edit mode. In object mode, I'm just going to bring up my N menu. If you press N on your keyboard, you get this little menu on the side. Incidentally, you can always hide this menu if you wish by pressing T. Just toggle that, and if you want to know what everything does, you can drag it out and you can see what all of these icons are for.
Okay.
Similarly, you can also drag this out as well if you've got a lot of information on your tabs. But we're just going to stick with the item tab for now. If I was to scale this object, let's just drag that back because it's putting me off. I'm not used to the words there. You can do it using this little icon here, and it, well, that's the move icon, or the scale icons, that one there, and you can scale it whichever way you want. This one is all distorted, and the reason is because my rotation is all off. So I'm just going to set the rotation so that it's all 0, and now you can see it's scaling the object correctly. And it always scales from the origin point. So if I'm dragging it that way, the origin point stays where it is and everything else drags out from there. But if I set my origin point, come on Lisa, set my origin point back to the centre of the geometry, if I scale it, it now scales from both sides. And you'll see here, under scale, we've got all these different values. Now when we come to export something to Unity, we need the scale to be uniform. And so I'm just going to delete that cube and we'll bring in a new one. So add in mesh cube, there we are, back to the beginning. And it's already got a scale of 1. When you come to model anything, it's always a good idea, if you can, to model on the mesh rather than scaling something in object mode. So you would hit tab. Normally you would just hit tab, or you would go from object mode to edit mode here. I have a plugin called Bagger Pie installed, which gives you all these pie menus, which just makes it really easy. You can go straight into face mode, straight into edge mode. At the top here, next to edit mode, you've got 3 buttons. You've got this, the little dots here, that shows you all the little dots on the mesh, and these are called vertices. You've got 1 vertex, multiple vertices. So many times I hear people in YouTube saying, I'm just going to move this vertex here. And I feel like saying, speak proper English. It's exactly the same as index. You have a single index, but you have multiple indices. So these are the vertices. If you click on this one here, you've got a line. These are edges. And these are faces, and each one of these you can do different things with. So this vertex, I can move it around and deform my cube. You can do the same with an edge, and you can do the same with a face. So you can actually rescale and resize your objects using that. And you'll notice in edit mode, when you move a face, your origin point always stays in the same place. And when we come out of edit mode, our scale is still 1.
How do you undo, if you do something, if you want to undo it?
Control and Z. Exactly the same as most other packages. Control and Z will undo everything.
Okay.
And redo, Lisa?
Redo, good question. I always go up here and do edit, redo, but according to this it's shift, control and Z.
Yeah, and that's, you have to try it.
Yeah, shift, control and Z, there we go. So most things under the menu, it tells you exactly what the hotkeys are. And I use hotkeys a lot. So if ever you're unsure what I've done, that's why I've got the screencast keys on as well. Here I've been using the arrows to move things around, but that's not generally how I do it. Usually I just hit G. So to move something, it's G for grab. Grab the object, move it around. R for rotate. If you press R twice, at the moment it's rotating on the axis of the way the camera's pointing. If you press R twice, you can rotate it on all axes. What else have we got? Scale, S for scale. And you would press S, scale your object, and left click on the mouse, and that's it, done. And you can do exactly the same in edit mode as well. If I was to choose this face and I scaled it, just left click and that's it, done. I could select, oh yes, selecting everything. A for all will select all faces in the mesh. The same for object mode. If I was to add another object, let's say I'm going to add a sphere, and I'll just move it over here. I hit A, it selects all the objects, but it's also selected, you'll see the camera and the light source. The camera is really, you don't need it. It's really only useful if you want to render your objects in Blender, render a picture of your objects. If you want to see it in action, you can just hit 0 on your numpad and that'll show you your camera view. And just hit 0 again to toggle off. Similarly with Unity as well, where you press F to zoom in on an object, with Blender you press the point, the period key on your numpad, and that'll zoom in on your object, any object. But you do have to generally use your scroll wheel to scroll out. With Unity it's best usually just to press the right mouse key and use your WASD keys as if you're in a game to move around. But with Blender it's not the same, it's a bit more awkward. You'll see it's rotating around the origin point of the object you've zoomed in on. So if I zoom in on this one, it will rotate about that origin point as well. I'm wondering what I should go to next. Let me just have a quick look at my notes here.
A question, Lisa.
Uh-huh.
How can you see how many polygons you have in the build or in an object?
If you go up to the top here, where it says show overlays, pull that down, little arrow next to it, and statistics, just tick that. And you can see there, in object mode, this shows you the entire scene. So you've got 518 faces, 972 triangles. If I get rid of the sphere, we've now got 6 faces and 12 triangles. Basically, with triangles, it's working on the fact, I presume, that most game engines triangulate your meshes anyway. So even if you work purely in quads, it's going to be triangulated. And I can show you that if I just turn on wireframe here. So you can see the edges in yellow of the object. If I was to, is it in here? I can never remember because I usually just face, it'll be face, won't it? Triangulate faces, there we go. You can now see that each quad has just had a line put through it basically. So we've now got 12 faces but still 12 triangles because it's calculated that by the time it's triangulated it'll have 12 triangles. I always triangulate my meshes anyway before I export them to Unity, just to save Unity having to do it, because Unity is quirky and it doesn't always do a good job. Some people will actually create something in Blender, save it as a Blender file and bring that into Unity, and that does generally work, but what you've got to remember is that Blender files will be hugely bloated. They'll have a load of information that you simply don't need for Unity. Unity has to convert the Blender file, it has to extract the model, get rid of all the other stuff it doesn't need, convert it to an FBX and triangulate it all in one go. And I think the more models you have that you're bringing into Unity, you're just creating unnecessary work for Unity. You're going to have problems eventually. I've had problems with it crashing. I've had problems with it not dealing with models correctly. And it just slows the whole thing down. It becomes very, very sluggish. So honestly, the easier you can make it for Unity, the better, in my opinion. So I'll not go into modelling just yet. I think what probably a good idea, if you're interested, is just to show you how I would export something to Unity and bring it in. So the first thing that I would do normally is UV unwrap it. This is already unwrapped, but it's not correct because I've changed the shape of me model. So I would hit A to select everything, and up here you can go to UV. We could try on basic unwrap. That's still not right. I think that might be because, oh no, my scale is correct. UV editing. UV, smart UV project maybe. We can try that. It's okay. It's okay. It's not fantastic. It's a little bit warped.
When I try to do UV editing, I just get one face.
Right. So have you actually unwrapped it is the main thing. So because this was originally a cube, the best one to choose would be cube projection. And then I would go to UV, pack islands. There we go. That's much better. Or is it? Why have I got these? That's still not right, is it? Let's just use me
Not what I was expecting.
UV pack master. How bizarre.
The other one was quite close though.
Yeah. I've not seen it do anything like that before. Cube projection.
What you had before was pretty good, Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one was
That's
okay,
probably going to be the best, to be honest. Yeah. Anyway, in order to bring it into Unity, I would normally export as an FBX. You can bring in other formats. You can bring in OBJ into Unity, but FBX is its native file type, so I would always recommend that. And then we go to Banter Projects, Lisa's Workshop, Assets, and we'll call it Boxy Thing because it's a boxy thing. We're going to export a mesh. We want the selected object only, otherwise it's going to also export the camera and the light. And then we want to make sure that it knows it's Y up. So we'll export the FBX. As you can see, it's Z up in Blender, so it has to convert it and make sure it's Y up. And there, because I put it into assets, there is our boxy thing. I'm going to delete those. You can just drag that into the hierarchy, and there it is.
It's a boxy thing.
And there is what we've just created. One of the nice things about this as well is I can literally, if I wanted to just do a little bit of modelling, don't worry, I will cover all of this at some point, and change the shape of it. I could export it again as the same object, and when we go into Unity, it hasn't done anything. That's not supposed to happen. Boxy thing. Export FBX. Well, that's strange.
Reload or F5 or something?
Shouldn't make any difference. It really shouldn't. Oh, hang on. That's why. Somehow I've managed to duplicate it. Okay. We'll do that again. Yeah. Export FBX boxy thing.
So did you have two objects?
I
then,
did.
just
I
before then,
duplicated
and
it
that's why didn't
somehow.
come across?
That's right.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was just show you that if you change your mesh and just overwrite your object, it should automatically change in Unity. There we go. So you can very easily adjust your models in your world as you go along. So one of the nice things you can do is, if I, for instance, I might not have it, I've just deleted it, it's gone, I've lost it. We could go in here, right click on boxy thing, show in Explorer, open up Blender, File, Import, FBX, and you can literally just drag and drop. Yeah, and then you can do whatever you want to do with it. So File, Export, FBX, and again, as long as you've got that still open, just drag and drop anyway on that box will do. And dragging and dropping's nice because it means you don't have to find your object. It's because it just copies the path and everything across. There it is. Yeah. Now, of course, every time you adjust your mesh, you need to adjust, like re-unpack your UVs as well. Normally, I don't use, the reason things were going wrong, I don't normally use things like Smart UV Project or Cube Projection. I usually unpack everything manually. That is probably something I'm going to show you in the future. It's certainly not something I would show you just yet. But it is literally a case of cutting the UV up manually. Lordy. And the whole idea, you see how wonky this has gone. The whole idea is, if you imagine that the object you've created is made out of paper, and it's all bits of paper stuck together, and you want to cut your model up and lay all the pieces of paper flat on the table. That's what you're aiming for with this when you come to do your UV unwrapping, and that is what you're aiming for when it comes to good texturing. You don't want anything like this where your faces are overlapping, your edges are overlapping. This would kind of work, but it would be pretty crappy. You put a texture on that and it's going to be distorted. I'm wondering if I should try and show you quickly. So you see how we've got twists and distortions all over this. Generally, I will use something like this. I'll use a grid when I'm unwrapping things, and what you're aiming for is for a perfectly straight grid on every face. And you want the grid to, if you can do, be the same scale on every face as well. So you don't want faces where it's like tiny and other faces where it's huge. So that's a little bit of a skill and a bit of an art form. Not everybody likes to unpack their stuff manually. They just like the quick way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're a bit anal like me and like your textures to be absolutely perfect, then yeah, unpacking manually is the way to go. Again, that's probably something for the future. When I come to show you about texturing, I will also try and go through the second UV channel for light mapping as well. Unity has something built in where you select your object, you go to model, and there's a little tick box down here which says generate light map UVs. And you've got a few settings where you can adjust it and try and get the best out of it. But to be honest, Unity's light map UVs are absolute pants. And I would honestly say, don't waste your time, because it wastes so much space in the light map. Your UVs is way too much padding, and it doesn't unwrap things properly. And if you have UVs that, for instance, aren't exactly unwrapped, but you might have them condensed into one point, which is what I sometimes do when I do colour mapping. I might have an object that's got many colours on it, but I can apply one material to it. And what I'll do is, certain areas, I'll select the vertices and I'll condense them down into one point and put them on a colour, on a texture. Usually a tiny texture, 64 by 64, can have loads and loads of colours on it, and you stick it on a pixel and that's the colour done. And it's one material, it's one draw call when you come to load it up. It's a really good optimization technique, and I'll teach that in the future as well. I will just quickly demonstrate. So I'm just going to snap everything to the... That's not what I wanted, is it? Goodness gracious, let's try that again. Snap selected to cursor, that's what I wanted. So all of my vertices on my UV map are all on one point, and I can put them wherever I like. And if you have a look at the colour of the object as I move it around, there I'm on a grey, there I'm actually just on the little red cross on that one. Literally a pixel in size is all you need of colour on a texture, and you can colour anything. That is a really nice way of colouring things if you're not going to be using PBR textures. PBR textures! Does anybody know what a PBR texture is? Do they need to know? Would you like me to explain? Right, PBR
Yes,
stands for physically based rendering, and the most common way of using a PBR texture is using a shader in Unity. I'm just right clicking here. You would normally use this little plus thing. I just right click and say create material, and your material uses a shader. This is the standard built-in shader in Unity. This is the one that you shouldn't use in Banter basically, because it's broken. Other shaders are fine. I am going to be going into custom shaders at some point as well, but the standard shader, I'll just show you this for now because this is the one that will always pop up. You've got different textures that you can plug into channels, and each one of them, as you build it up, will make your texture look more and more realistic. If we quickly go to ambientcg.com perhaps. This is a nice free place. Another one's Polyhaven. Ambientcg.com I usually go to first, and you can find a texture that you like the look of. Let's just say we'll go with this kind of stone wall thing. In this instance, I'm not going to worry about PNGs. PNGs are necessary if you want to use alpha transparency. But in this case, it's a solid thing. It's a smaller file. It's just quicker to render. So I'm just going to use a 2K JPEG for now.
These links that you have shown, can you put them in the description on YouTube as well?
I will do. They are already in here somewhere in Share Something Useful, I believe.
Nice.
Texture websites. I shared them here, but then also Aline added this one, which combines everything. I think it's like a central search engine, and it'll bring up all these different places. You can search for what you want and it'll show you where to get them from.
Nice.
But like I say, I've downloaded this one. Have I got it already open? I think I did, didn't I? Yes. So I'm just going to drag that into here. And I'm just going to unzip it. Oh, looks like I've downloaded that one already at some point. So here is our texture, our PBR texture, and lots of different things in there. Some of them you'll use, some of them you won't. I am also going to show you how to combine some of these grayscale maps into one texture as well as another optimization technique. Again, that's called channel packing, and I'm going to cover that in a later session. But for now, we're just going to use the basic things. We don't need this, that's just the icon from the website showing it. We don't need any of these things. USDC, don't need that. We've got an ambient occlusion map, tells you at the bottom there and up here. That's useful, we'll use that, but because it's a grayscale map, we can untick sRGB. This is the colour one, we don't need to change anything. This is displacement, I'm not going to use displacement. We generally only use, at the most, at the very, very most, you'd use your colour, possibly ambient occlusion, normal map, possibly roughness, possibly metallic. They're all optional. We've got two normal maps here. Normal DX is for Unreal Engine, we don't need it. Unity uses OpenGL, so we get the one that says normal GL, and we have to tell it that it's a normal map, so it knows what to do with it. And this is roughness, this is also a grayscale map. So we'll just turn off sRGB.
sRGB, is it for, what is that exactly, do you know?
It's the colour, it tells you that it's a colour image, and it needs to take all the colour information from it. A grayscale map, if you untick that, then it knows that it's simply a case of each of these pixels is a value between 0 and 1. 0 being off, 1 being fully on. So it's telling it for every pixel how rough this object is, and with ambient occlusion it's telling it how dark the shadows are for each pixel. So you don't need the colour information basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So roughness, Blender uses roughness. Unfortunately, Unity uses smoothness. You see here, and in the standard shader there's no way to plug in a smoothness map either, you've just got a slider. The standard shader is a bit complicated. Normally what it would expect is that in the alpha channel of your colour image you would have the data, the smoothness data basically. So you would, instead of having transparency, you would normally use the alpha channel for transparency, but it's used for other things, and with the standard shader the alpha channel is used to contain smoothness information, which is why there's no way to plug smoothness, because it's all in the albedo, the colour bit. I find that complicated, unnecessary, and I never ever use a standard shader, even though you shouldn't be in Banter anyway. So a good alternative to start with is Autodesk Interactive, because hey ho, it just takes standard PBR textures and you can plug in a roughness map. So there's a little what do you call one of these padlocks, little padlock at the top, so you can lock that window in place while I open up our textures, and we can plug them in. probably what I should have done is apply that material to the object first so you can see it building up. So bricks, we'll plug that into albedo, and it's kind of bricky. Ambient occlusion, we plug into occlusion. Normal, we plug into normal. And roughness, we plug into roughness. But you'll see it looks dreadful, and that's because it hasn't been unwrapped properly. We've got distortion. I mean, bits of it are okay. It kind of looks like a stone wall. The bits that are rough, the bits that are shiny, but these bits that haven't been unwrapped correctly, you get these stretches. And this is one of the reasons, well, it is the reason why it's so important to unwrap properly. And like I say, I like to do it manually, but in this instance, I'm just going to do it using, what have I just done? Cube projection. Cube projection. And then I've...
Can't you just do it by surface? Like, break up all those surfaces and do it like each surface facing?
You mean manual?
Yeah, that's manual unwrapping,
so you
yeah.
Don't get that stretch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've just used the automatic cube projection for this because it is blocky. It's based on a cube. Most times it works well. So let's just export it again. Boxy thing. And there we go. It's much, much, much better.
Mm-hmm.
What you can do is you can adjust the tiling on here to make it a lot smaller, but you've got to remember that if you apply that material to another object and you want the tiling to be a different scale, you're going to have to duplicate your material and have a different scale for it. And you can get away with only using the one object by adjusting the scale in the UVs. So I could scale this. I've just hit A for select all, S for scale, and I've pressed 5 to give it to make it 5 times bigger. We can export that again as an FBX. And there it is. The scale is still 1, but because we've made the UVs 5 times bigger, then the texture is 5 times smaller, essentially. And we can have as many objects as we like using the one material, and each one of them can have a different scale of texture. So that's something else I would recommend. Sorry,
I was just going to say, does the scale affect does it have an effect on the sort of file size, the rendering, when you bring it into Banter?
No, absolutely
Okay,
not.
so,
no.
yeah.
What I've used
But
is a
obviously the
tileable
more
material.
textures,
Yeah, it doesn't matter how big your UVs are, it's still got the same number of faces, edges and vertices. All you've done is adjusted the world space coordinates that each of those things occupy. But it doesn't increase the size of your object at all. The more complicated your object is, the more dense your mesh is, the more vertices you have, then yes, that's when your file size gets bigger. But very, very simple objects. You can make your object 5 miles across in Blender if you wanted, and it'll still be the same file size in Unity.
Right.
And like I say, because we've used a tileable texture that's got a limited size as well, it's just repeating that same texture across the surface of the object. Texture size stays the same regardless. And tileable textures, well, like I say, if you can use the same material for every object as well. That improves performance. The fewer materials you have, the better. The more you can reuse materials and textures across your world, the better. So try and keep, especially your textures, keep them down to a minimum if possible, because you can do some really creative things with them in Blender and Unity to make them look different. Like for instance, this material here, I know I would be creating another material, but if you wanted one that was a different colour, you would just duplicate it. You can just right click and duplicate. No, you can't with this one. I need to press Control and D. You can with your objects. You can right click and duplicate in the hierarchy. I'll actually do that here, and we'll just drag it over there. And we'll press F to zoom in on it. And we'll give that, I don't know which is which now. We'll put that one on there, and we'll put that one on there. So this material, you'll notice you can also choose a colour tint. So I might want to colour my wall red, or yellow, or give it a funny greeny colour. It is a new material, but at least you've reused the texture. The real power comes in when you come to make your own shaders. That's when it gets really exciting. The things you can do, you can animate your shaders. You can, you can do vertex displacement. I don't know if you remember in Elaine's world where she holds a 3D workshop. She has the world that it's in, the ground moves and the walls move and stuff. That's all done in a shader. So it's not like it's animated and it's keyframed or anything like that. It's all just done in the shader. That's brilliant. We'll cover that as well. How we're getting on? Oh, we've ran over. We've ran over time.
That went quick.
It did, yes. I hope I haven't waffled on too much and that you've
No.
Oh no.
at least
No, that was brilliant.
taken something away from it. I'm more than happy if you've got any questions for the next one. I will happily go over anything again and go into anything in much more detail. But I just really wanted to give you an idea of how to go ahead moving about in Unity and Blender.
Hello.
Goodness gracious me.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. It's been very helpful. Very helpful.
It has.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been doing so many things wrong that I just realised it's like, yes, it's brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, excellent. I'm going to stop the OBS.